Echav. So once you get the syllables down, you want to get the words down, then you get the phrases down. See, so these go together, these go together, these go together. So you get 3 sets of 2. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Listen, Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Wa'ahavta. Eif Adonai Eloheka. And you will love the Lord your God. This is a major pause in Hebrew. We call it an athnak. How shall we love him? V'kol levaveka. Yeah, so that's a fun one to say. Get the lips going. Levaveka. Uvakol. Nafshika. Uvakol. Ma'odeka. Okay, that is the Shema, what Jesus, your Savior, called the first and greatest commandment. Okay, so let us take a look and see what we can see. So, okay, so go back to Logos, and you have your Hebrew Bible up here. And I'm just going to point out a few things just to kind of dip our toes in the water, and we'll get more and more into it in a progressive revelation sort of way. All right, so what I want to do is I want to move this panel to the right. So I put my cursor up there and just slide it over to the right. Just take up the right panel. Now I'm going to bring up the ESV. So I click on that plus sign to bring up a new tab, and it's right there for me. So ESV, double click on that. And it brings that up. So now I can slide the ESV over to the left. I have the Hebrew on one side, I have the ESV on the other side. And here's a very practical function, but it's very commonly needed. You want to keep these two panels tracking with each other. So the way you do that is we'll go into the right panel first, and you want to click on that down arrow. And you click on it, and you want to put this in a link set. So this will couple the two screens together. So when one forwards, the other forwards. So we'll call it link set A. So just go in here, we press the down arrow, set A. And we'll come over here to the left panel, down arrow. We'll do the same thing, link set A. And you can have as many link sets as you want, but we'll keep it link set. So let's say I wanted to go to Proverbs 3:5 over here. That automatically tracks with this side over here, so it keeps them synchronized. And here's where you can see the power of a computer, because imagine if you had all these books spread out and you were able to just flip automatically to the same spot simultaneously. So that's what we've just done. Quickly.
How did you link set it again? What did you do?
Okay, you go into here, that down arrow, so you see where the the document is portrayed visually. You go into there, plus press the left key.
Okay.
Comes up, link set, just select A. You come over here, do the same thing,
Okay.
link set A. And as many windows as you have up, you can have linked to the same section. Okay, so let's go back to Deuteronomy 6:4. You can type in that reference in either window.
So there's a go back arrow, right?
What's that?
There's an arrow that will allow you to go back, right?
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so here we are. I'll just dabble a little bit. So, at this point in the course, you're probably thinking, well, you're more familiar with English, which you probably are. So you use the English as your reference point, and then you get at the bottom what's called a reverse interlinear. An interlinear puts the text of interest first, which if we're studying Hebrew, you have the Hebrew here, and then you could have the English underneath. That's called an interlinear. A reverse interlinear is to start with the English and get visibility into the Hebrew. See, because this is a translation from this. This should be our starting point, but since we're speakers of English, we want this to be our starting point. That's why it's called a reverse interlinear. So we just highlight the word here, and this takes us down to what it's translating. And then the lights here, that column is highlighted in blue. So by highlighting the English up there, it shows you which Hebrew word renders here. And this little orange Arabic numeral shows you what order it is in the Hebrew, but you can see it over there. The transliteration, Shema, it doesn't give you the syllables though, right? Then you have the root, then you have a transliteration of the root. This gives you the part of speech. So it's a verb, it's masculine, it's singular, it's an imperative. If you hover over that, it'll decode that for you. So if I put the cursor over here, it says verb, cal, imperative, second person, masculine, singular. We'll talk about what that is, but I think you know what an imperative is. It's the voice of command. But who's being commanded is masculine, singular. But what is this idea of Shema? To get to that, what you want to do is put your cursor over here, and you want to press the right key. And there are various ways that you can get at this, but the most streamlined way is just to do a Bible word study. Okay, so you have the lemma. Lemma is a fancy word for saying the dictionary form. The dictionary form of that. Let's do a Bible word study on that Hebrew word Shema, because that's what you want to understand is the Hebrew word. So we'll select Bible word study, and it's going to give you a lot of information, and it gives it to you over here, and it's a different panel. So my Hebrew Bible is still here, but it's just brought up another panel, which I can move down, I can move over, I can do anything I want. But to give it the most visibility, I'll just leave it up over here. So working down, here's the kind of information it gives you. It's a very common verb, right? 1,154 times. And this shows you the distribution throughout the books of the Bible. If we were to expand that, it would show you precisely how many times it's used in whatever book. This is actually a very helpful section. Dictionaries will always be of benefit to us, especially for non-specialists. I mean, if you go on and get a doctorate in Hebrew and you're teaching Hebrew, maybe you can use the dictionaries less. But a student will always need a dictionary. They can always benefit. And in your Logos package, you have the two best dictionaries. The first one is Hallowed, which is the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon. I brought a hard copy when it was 4 volumes, and I brought some 2-volume set if you're interested in a bound volume. But you can pass this around to see what it looks like in the hard copy. But one thing I would recommend, and I'm kind of adding this to the suggestions that the videos gave you, is you can just highlight HAL, and you can actually see the entry in that dictionary automatically. And here's something to consider. So let's highlight that, and it brings up the whole entry over here. And it's a long entry because it's used so many times. One thing you may want to do initially, I mean, it gives you the cognate evidence. It gives you the cognate evidence, which means how it's used in other Semitic languages. But what you can do is at least see where they placed this instance. Okay, so we're going down, and it should highlight Deuteronomy 6:4. So with something with this many usages, and here it is. So, the compilers of the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon are the most brilliant Hebrew scholars on the planet. Their judgment is more mature than a beginning student's is, so I think it's helpful to at least see where they put it, and then you can kind of, read the information right. Now, they're not perfect, they're not inspired, but these are the brightest Hebrew minds on the planet, and what they kind of thought it meant in terms of this particular instance. So the advantage of having Logos in a computer is that it goes right to it. It shows you that they placed Deuteronomy 6:4 under the category to hear with ears. To hear with ears. So, they're at least saying that the original intent is that they should listen to the command of God. They should actually be in a position where they can hear it in through their ears, because then there's the ability to take it to heart, to obey it, and all these things. So it may appear further on down the article as well, but at least it shows you where they placed it. Now with BDB, which is the one-volume dictionary, this is the older dictionary that we use. You can do the same thing over with BDB. Now, it's an older dictionary, so their judgment wasn't as mature. But you go over here, and now you have the BDB entry. And so now you have the English Standard Version, you have the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon, and now you have BDB, and you can kind of spend some time with that. So this will also highlight Deuteronomy 6:4, since it knows that's the passage that we're dealing with. Let's see where they place it. All right. Let's see here. Or they may not have it because neither one of the dictionaries are exhaustive. So if it's not in the entry, it's not gonna show here. Okay, I don't see it offhand, but I'm sure it's somewhere. But anyway, you can read the whole dictionary article if you like. But let's take a look at this this next piece of information, which is a pie chart showing you how it's translated in the English Standard Version. So the set of English equivalents, or what we call glosses, because there's never a one-to-one correspondence between the donor and receptor language. We call these English words glosses. It shows you how it's translated in the English Standard Version. Whatever Bible you have up, it shows you the distribution there. Now, granted, this is 1,157 times. And you can see that it's often just translated heard, to hear, hearing, listen. But notice this yellow column here, the sense of obeying, the sense of understanding, the sense of discerning. So at least by, now granted, the translators of ESV are making a judgment call every time this word is used. And in some of these instances, they're saying, well, this is more the idea of obeying. This is more the idea of discerning, more understanding. So at least that's a part of the overall ability of the word to communicate that. And I would say in Deuteronomy 6:4, that's implied, that you're not just going to hear it, but you're actually going to follow through and do these things. That's why verse 5 is there, and you will love. So by just taking a kind of a cursory glance at this, you know that these other options are available. Now, Heiser points out in the video of how sometimes you can get really divergent meanings, and when that's the case, sometimes this word over here goes back to a different parent than this one over here. They're actually, homonyms, but they have different sets of meaning. That's not the case here. I mean, all of these stem back to this idea of listening. It's just that this one is fuller in terms of the implication of taking it to heart and putting into action what one hears. So by the wheel, you can know that that's a possibility. And you've read the Gospels. Jesus says, "For he who has ears, let him hear." This kind of idea of really hearing, really taking to heart, I think is inherent in there. Okay, so There's much that we could do with this word, but what I want to do is kind of hit a few points about those three words that we looked at the end, heart, soul, and strength. Yeah, big deal.
My numbers are different.
Me too.
And
And that is because, are you using ESV?
yes,
Did you do the lemma? Search on lemma? How different are they?
you have 10, oh, okay, for the lemma, it's, I have 1,099.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And then go
Well, I have 1,070.
over here.
Well, that's under the wheel, right? Because under the wheel it says 170.
Under the wheel.
Yeah, but then up here it says 109.99. It says
You paid a little more money for your version, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say with a word that is this common, okay, everyone listen for a minute. With a word that is this common, you know, you may miss a common occurrence here or there, but that's all that's going to happen if there's a slight variation in the number. It has to do with the text that it's searching through, the English text, and whether it's counting the lemma or the actual, you know, vowel form. So I wouldn't worry about that.
You have version 5 or 6 as well?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it shouldn't make a difference because it should just, because that's just a matter of more functionality. But the underlying search engine and data processing should be using the same, you know, heuristic in both of those. So I wouldn't worry about that here. Okay, so let's go to those three words.
I'm sorry, Dr. Meyer.
That we have. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I just interrupt real quick?
Sure.
Anybody that has a MacBook, do you guys know how to highlight and double click the word here? Because I can't get that chart to pop up.
I just did it. For whatever reason, I had to right click and go to the lemma to the right, go up where you see.
It's not coming up at all.
Yeah, it will. It just
will.
came
You
up
gotta
for
get
me.
it
I've been
time.
fighting with
It
it for
takes
10
time.
minutes.
Oh, okay, so just highlight it and
Yeah.
double click it?
Double click, it takes time though.
Yeah, it
And
takes
go over the word
forever.
Because
stuff.
you only have one key.
Yeah, there's only one key, so.
Yeah, with the PC base, it's the right key. With you double click.
I don't want to hold anybody up. You can go ahead.
That's okay. So what we're saying is, though, with the Mac, it's a double click instead of right click.
I believe so. I know it comes up for me.
Okay.
I'm not techie. I just know it happens.
Okay. So there's a slight difference, yeah, because it was originally written for, you know, the PC, and the right key brings this information up. Okay, so I'll try to keep us paced a little bit. I want to show you these three words. Okay, so the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. Okay, so we want to highlight in English the word heart, and you see down here it's levav. And let's just go right to the word study on that one. So Bible word study. Now this is only used 250 times. Okay? So you can see the majority of times it's used to, it renders it as a heart. But take a look at the next biggest category is mind. And if we hover over that piece of the pie, it breaks that down. Okay, so this is really neat. So out of that number, which is 64, here are the contexts where it is translated mind. So you can really kind of zoom in on that. But at least it gets you thinking, well, what do heart and mind have in common in English? When you talk about the heart of a person, you're not talking about the organ, but you're talking about the invisible then, the seat of the emotions, the seat of the will, the seat of the intellect. I mean, it's really the engine that makes their body go, right, the levav. In many senses, this is like the theological idea of soul, right? Because when you think of soul theologically as a Christian, you're thinking of the invisible you. In fact, you know, some people believe that people are only two parts, their body and soul. So body is the visible part, the soul is the invisible part, and when you die, your soul leaves. I actually believe that man is three parts because of what Paul says. May the Lord keep you body, soul, and spirit until the day of Christ Jesus. But I think this is in that domain of, you know, the invisible part of us where we feel, where we think, where we make decisions, the part of us that will live on forever and ever and ever. Kind of like the real you that transcends this visible part that will one day pass away. Okay, but you can play with that. If we go back, the translation, the root is not going to help a whole lot. Senses gives you some information there. Okay, so you can sift through that information later. It's a lot to work through, but you know, based on my 30 years of Hebrew work, I would say that the main idea here is that you know, I think mind is fine as a translation for this. I think, you know, with your inner person, really love him. Don't just say that you love him, but think about him in the most loving, holy terms. May he be your motivation. You know, may he float your boat. You know, may he be, you know, really your all in all in terms of what you really live for. If you were to strip away the facade, you know, all that people can see and experience, you know, what are you really thinking about in your inner person? Really love him that deeply. And we often do see that through the emotions, we see that through the actions. So I would say this is more the idea of soul. The thinking apparatus, the emotive apparatus, the motivational piece that we have within us. But at a cursory glance, you can see that mind is within the scope of what this word can be. And notice it's all of that. You know, he wants your whole soul. So, you know, heart, it's not the organ. It's almost like, you know, put your heart into it. You know, your heart and soul. You know, your passion, your devotion, your commitment. All of these ideas are communicated. But that's a word that is so commonly used. At some point, you know, to really wrestle with it throughout Scripture is something that everyone should do. Is there a question or comment?
I was pointing out.
Pointing to a seat. Okay, good. Okay, good. Let's go to the next word. So I would say it's fine to translate that soul or mind. Now this next word, translated soul, I really do not think that's the best translation. So here's the second. We're to love the Lord with all of our mind or our soul. This second one, we highlight it, we come down here, we see the word nephesh, right? The lexical form is nephesh. And let's do a word study on that. So right key for PC users, double click for Mac users, and do a Bible word study on the lemma. So the lemma is what we want. We do a Bible word study on that, and we're going to get a whole host of information. So one thing you notice is that, you know, let's see, it's 729 uses. It's a very common word in Scripture. Hover over soul, and you'll get the breakdown there. That's 234 times. So what you're seeing is roughly a third of the occurrences are soul. And it gives you this kind of background information. Neck, breath, living being, people, personality, that kind of idea. But living being, I mean, the neck or the breath gives you the sense that it's onomatopoetic. It's the sound that breath would make coming out of the mouth cavity emanating from the throat or the lungs, that kind of idea. But life is interesting. As a parallel with chai is the basic idea of you know, life In fact, in the Hebrew community, they have a saying called l'chaim, l'chaim being plural, to life, you know, to the fullest, to celebrate this gift that God has given us. In all these different forms of chai over here, to be alive, to stay alive, to live, that kind of idea. So you know that that's within the realm of possibility. Now, if we go to the actual occurrences themselves, let's do this. Let's go over here to soul. And what I want to do is do something slightly different. Right key, do search this resource. And it's going to show you everywhere in the ESV where this word is used. So it's going to be a lot of data, but let's do that. So search this resource. And over here you get all the occurrences. And what you can do is begin at the beginning. Right? Now, in terms of being a Bible teacher, a Bible student, you have to understand that the Torah is one scroll. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy were all written by Moses. The best place to look for the meaning of a word in Deuteronomy is in the Pentateuch, or in the Torah, because that's the oldest corpus we have. It's written by Moses. You know, he's using similar themes. So to look at some of these early occurrences, Genesis 1:20. And the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures. You mean creatures have a nephesh? Yeah, they do. These are not people, these are animals have a nephesh. Do animals have a soul? Not in the theological sense. Are animals going to be in heaven? Well, I know this. Christ did not die on the cross for animals. So they're not redeemable, right? I think animals are made for what? For man's enjoyment, to kind of provide an environment that is emotive and playful and enjoyable and these kind of things. But in the sense that man and woman have souls that can be redeemed, they can be sinful, they can rebel against God. Animals don't have that. Okay. And here's something else. In Genesis, when it says the serpent was crafty, he's the only one that's crafty. And why is he crafty? Because Satan is working through him. There's nothing inherent that's evil about the serpent. All the animals are innocent. They're amoral. Animals are amoral beings. So even with this, this beginning, the great sea creatures and every living creature, and so forth. So you get the sense right from the beginning that the idea is animation. Okay, the passage of breath out of the mouth, emanating from the chest or from the lungs. And so here's what I see into that in terms of my understanding of that passage. So we're to love the Lord our God with all that we are, our inner person, how we think, how we feel, what our passion is. But then with our nephesh, what does that mean? That means opportunity. That means redeeming the time for the days are evil. Every breath that passes out of our lungs is an opportunity that should not be missed. It's an opportunity to love God while we're still animate, right? So with every single animate breath that you take, love Him in that moment. There's not a moment that should be wasted for God. So the soul idea, as we think of it, is encompassed here. This speaks to opportunity. So what does that mean? It means love God now. Don't think, well, when I retire, I'll love God. Or if I have nothing else to do, I'll love God. No, love Him now. This is an opportunity that is a gift from God. What you do with it is your gift to Him. The best thing in the world is for people to come to know Christ at an early age and to get starting serving Him early, right? So like Jeremiah, I'm only a child. That's a good thing, Jeremiah. Start as early as possible. Don't waste any opportunity. And I'm a second career person. I had a career in electrical engineering, and You know, you can look back at your past and say, well, you know, was that the best thing? Did I make the right decisions? Okay, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead. The finish line is over there. And I can't change my start, but I can show enough finish well. And so here's a breath, here's a breath, here's a breath, here's a breath. I need to love God with every one of those breaths. There should never be a time when we say, I'm taking a break from that stuff, you know. Or you know, I don't want to step on any toes, but I have no plans of retiring from the Christian life. I mean, Caleb was 85, and he says, I want that mountain.
That's the one.
That's what they call him. You know what Caleb means in Hebrew? It means God. So here's this 85-year-old man saying, that's the mountain I want. I want it. Give it to me. And he's the one that they look to as a beacon of faith. Our churches are full of people that have retired from the Christian. Oh, let the young people do it. We'll go to the food buffet. We'll go down to Florida. We'll do this stuff. And my father lived to be 93. Okay, but you know, we need everybody all the time. We need everybody all the time. It is an opportunity to serve God if you have breath in your lungs, because one day you're not going to have breath in your lungs. Jesus said, "Let's work while the day is at hand, for a night is coming when no one shall work." So it speaks to opportunity. All right. So when you preach on that, I think that's what you should talk about. But the last one is the most illustrative. I mean, you would expect if